Okay, we're live. Um, First of all, let me know if you can hear my voice okay, because I can still make some sound adjustments, but I'm basically recording all of these blind or deaf, so I don't know how the stream sounds on your end because I have to have my music system, my headphones, which is like different sound levels, and of course I can't hear my own voice because otherwise it would be just too distracting to formulate any sentences in English. Okay, do I have everything? Yes, and I have tons of coffee as well, which is super nice. Dr. Useless is saying, I'm excited for some great art. Like, that is super intimidating because I don't want to feel like I have to make some great art when I start a live stream. I'm just gonna do my best. That is what I'm here for. And hopefully we'll learn something as well. So this is my sketch that I made. Can I do a like? Hey, I want to show one really cool tip about this sketch. So as you see in this sketch, I made the body out of like two oval shapes, basically. And those oval shapes in these two frames, can you see how the shape changes? That is only the warp tool in transform mode. That is the same oval shape, and I transformed it with a warp tool to look like the body. And I think that was like a really cool and simple start. That's why you don't see a tons of like sketching lines of me trying to find that shape. It was just me molding that shape like dough with the warp tool. So that I recommend to messy sketchers like me. I'm very messy sketcher. But here we have an idea, and I think this is something that I can start working on. Maybe a bit too tight of a frame for now, but I'm gonna explore that a little bit further. But the exciting news, I have some like bad and good news here in the beginning. So, hello, Dragorsi's Tarot, Orsi in parentheses. Okay, especially for you and Esme and Saras Konstingheter. So, I have kind of vaguely talked about this idea of releasing my own graphic illustration set. I thought that this is an idea that is going to be like super far away. The bad news is that it is not downloadable yet, but the good news is that I think it might be tomorrow or day after tomorrow because it is basically ready. I still haven't tagged any of these brushes. As you can see, they don't have tags yet, but all of the channel members are going to get this brush set that I use for all of my graphic illustrations. And I've been using this same set for years, and I've been developing it for all of those. Like, for example, if you see my Halloween illustration, Heart of Darkness, that is done with that. And all of my juice box fruit pictures, they have all been done with this graphic illustration set. But during my last trip in Ireland, that happened last week, so because I was in Cork, and Cork is not Dublin, and obviously it would probably be really easy to get to Dublin from here by just going from Helsinki to Dublin. I'm pretty sure that there are direct flights, but Cork is a really small place. I'm, by the way, going to use piano notes for sketching. The reason why I like using this brush for sketching is because it produces these like very quick and messy lines. And yet, as you can see, if I do like really quick zigzags, it still smoothens them out because the smoothing is so strong that it fits really well with this graphic style. But it has like flexibility for me to sketch my ideas, what I have in mind. Anyway, I'm trying to get on with both of these stories. So, because Cork is such a small place, I had to switch through Amsterdam, and the flight switches were just insane. First of all, because of the current situation on all airports, they basically don't have enough staff for security here in Helsinki. there in Amsterdam, and on my trip to Stockholm, the same issue was there. So everybody is kind of advised to be on their flights like super early. So on all of my flights, the transfer times from flight to flight, they were just super crazy. And during this time, I basically had made myself like all of the materials to kind of like check up on this process. And because I had like basically almost 10 plus hours to do the final details on like just checking up all of the textures and tiling and like bug fixing and that sort of stuff, I was able to kind of finish the entire set on my last stay in Amsterdam. I already forgot what the airport is actually called in Amsterdam. It's a really, really difficult name. Something Schiol something. Esme can probably help with that. Anyway, the airport was great, and I had this really nice perk of my boyfriend had bought me a gift of having the airport lounge to stay in when I was coming from Cork, because that in between flights time was 5 hours. So I was there for 5 hours just working on this set. Anyway, I'm like super happy to finally like give everybody access to this, because it's something that I've used for a really long time, and sometimes when I do those graphic illustrations, people ask me where they can get those process, but I always felt like it's kind of like a silly set because it's so basic, and there are some processes that I felt like were kind of like too simple. But then I thought that like now that I have this membership, I can just give it to people there, and that made me work on it, and now I think it's a really good. I think I made some improvements for some process that I have been using myself, and I don't think I would have made those improvements if I hadn't like considered like sharing the set at all. And it's also one of those things that like makes me really happy to have the membership, and to have the membership done in a way where I am kind of free to make all kinds of like fun and useful stuff for my members, so that I am not I haven't set myself into like a schedule that I need to be live every Wednesday or share an illustration every Thursday. Like if I had that kind of a schedule, I don't think it would be as fun for me, and I don't think I would have as much time to come up with like new ways of like creating courses and videos and all of these live lessons. So I don't know. I've heard a lot of people who have, for example, Patreon, which is basically the same kind of stuff as a membership is, that people burn out because they feel like they need to kind of like just endure this treadmill that they have set out for themselves. So if you're an illustrator and you're considering of like doing a YouTube membership or Patreon at some point, I think like the best advice that I can give you is to kind of like, please don't set yourself into like too tight of a framework when starting a membership of any kind. You want to kind of protect your creativity, because I think you will be able to kind of take better care of your community and just like have more stuff and content that is useful and relevant to them, and something that you can be excited about, because I think your members are also going to be excited about something that you actually want to make, not just because you said that you're going to make it. So that's stuff that I'm pretty happy about. Okay. I've also shared some like wallpapers on my membership, but like that would also be something that I think would be really easy to kind of burn myself out on. If I, for example, promise that I will have a wallpaper each month, that would make me focus on a vertical illustration each month, and now already I'm setting myself like really tight parameters on like what my creativity can make. Okay, I'm just gonna pause for a second and look at these tree shapes. I don't think I've done like organic looking trees in this style before, so that's a kind of like a design challenge that I think is interesting. I think with these sketching lines, the rough, it doesn't have to be this brush, by the way. I don't want anybody to think that you need my brushes to take advantage of these illustration tricks, but you can pick any brush that has this sort of like gritty texture to it that doesn't produce clean lines, and at least for me it helps me kind of like generate ideas where I don't have to think that does it look good or not, because like none of these lines are going to be final. Everything is going to be covered in the blocking and with those clean shapes. Okay. Morning, Samantha. Hugs from Canada. Hugs to Canada back. I'm so happy that I have coffee this time. What's up, Angry Miko? Well, my name is spelled with 2 Ks. If it was just Miko, that would mean that I'm a Japanese shrine maiden, which to my knowledge I am not. So it's an understandable mistake, but 2 Ks. Also, I don't mind that people write my name however, like, honestly, I understand. Like for me, when I was in Amsterdam, all of the local names were just unpronounceable to me. So same with Finnish names, that they are probably really difficult for languages that aren't used to double consonants like that. Okay. I think that's kind of... I would sort of want to see more of like what this feature is looking at, but I think I need to have more information before I am allowed to make any such decisions. So now I'm going to pick the cell brush. Cell brush is something that I'm very used to using, and I'm sure that people who have had, for example, this brush in the 100K set are used to how it works. So basically, cell brush, if I tilt my stylus sideways, that is how I can get these transparent brush strokes. But it's good for example, cel-shaded artwork or graphic art, when you can get these sort of like really clean looking like color blocks. But when you want to mix colors, then you can easily get these transparent pixels where you can color pick something and then just go back. So that's the point of that. But for those who aren't used to using the tilting method, I also made this blocking brush. And the point of blocking brush is to basically delete that feature that I just mentioned, so that you can be sure that you are creating these like really clean shapes. I think I'm gonna go above everything, and then in screen mode, let's pick something like really bright, like this. That way I can actually see where I am drawing. So I'm gonna group all of the line art layers. Oh. I forgot that I'm not working in Photoshop and I cannot adjust group opacity. Come on, Procreate. Work with me here. As much as I like Procreate, there are still some things that I don't see that I will ever not do in Photoshop. Like for example, I love doing color editing phase for pretty much most of my paintings. Not all of them, but for most I use Photoshop for color editing and I love doing it there. And having said that, it's not something that I wish that like those tools would be added to Procreate. That is not what I want at all. I want Procreate to stay simple and just have the basic tools that are needed to illustrate. It makes it such an like an enjoyable tool to work with, because there aren't these menus and features kind of like distracting you. That's what I love about Procreate. I don't want Procreate to become an editing application, and I don't think that's their plan either. But when I say that I like doing something in Photoshop, it is because that is an editing application. Photoshop is not a painting application. So basically I'm making really quick lines, because that way I can keep them like as clean as possible. I think I still need to kind of lower the opacity to see what I'm doing. You can get away with like a lot of like approximations when you have high opacity line art, even when you have colored line art. But when you have none, you kind of have to take every corner more seriously, because you are defining the edges with your brush strokes. I'm only going to do the front legs, because as I'm like making these shapes with this blocking brush, I'm also thinking about the future selections, because this style is basically all about problem solving with selections. And I hope that I can get to like that stuff as quickly as possible in this live stream. That's why I wanted to have like some kind of a sketch to start with, so that I can show you the basic principles of like how to do this file. I mean, the way you do it is probably going to be very different, and you're going to have your own solutions, but I hope that like seeing these workflows can like inspire you to come up with some ideas that will make you want to paint more. I probably said it like 1,000 times on these live streams, but I have really shaky hands. So for that reason, like these brushes that have a lot of smoothing, and they also have pressure sensitivity dampened. So for someone like me who cannot draw a straight line to save my life, that's something that I love doing. Okay. I'm gonna do some really quick color blocking for the background as well. I really don't know what the color is going to be, and just like clicking through some options here. I think I'm just gonna slap in something flat for now. That can be solved later. I'm going to boost the opacity a little bit and just to kind of like get the ball rolling on mood, I'm going to take one of these splatter process. And I think I'm going to start with the controlled spray. I don't know. No, wait, I think I'm going to take one of the splatter ones. Actually, I want to check how big this canvas is. I think it's about right. This I want to keep behind. I think there's something interesting in this that I like. By the way, I always love using these splatters. That's why I have so many of them. And they have different purposes. So the fine, fast, detailed spray, I try to like vocalize in the brush names what they are good for. So force in these names means that when you zoom in, the contrast in this splatter is like very high contrast, and they get gradually like softer. Like this is a bit softer. I'm gonna show it as a comparison. It's like a softer look of spray can. And then the soft gray is the softest version of all of these. So these are something that I usually use to shade my images. And because I have these like clean graphic lines, these textured process are something that is going to be kind of like an contrast with that like clean look to give it a bit of like a human touch, just a bit of like warmth. I don't know better way to explain it. But I think it makes those like flat surfaces look a bit more interesting. One thing that I always like to do as well is to have tons of gradients. Like for example, when I have this gradient with the spray brush, I am just using a really big Gaussian blur on everything. And then I can just like set it at a bit lower resolution. That way I can kind of keep the high contrast of the edges, but at the same time have a bit of like softness that will just fit with the kind of mood that I usually like working with a bit more. I'm gonna go to the background like these and just work on those trunks. Where is my noodle? Here is my noodle. Morning, Mikko. Will these be available for Photoshop 2? Well, I have to think. I have to think about that. Like, not this week, for sure. But I will make the downloads available for all channel members either tomorrow or day after tomorrow, depending on how this goes. I basically want to have a little bit more time with this set to just make sure that like all of it works well. So that's something that is kind of like hard to rush. I'm really kind of picky about like when I want to release my process, because I want to be like 100% sure that they don't cause any problems for the users. because I want to solve problems and not be part of the problem. And I know that like most people have the problem of having already too many brushes, so I don't want to kind of add more to that clutter. So I want to add tools that actually solve problems and make painting more fun, if that's possible. I know that that can be frustrating when I'm just like testing something that is not available yet. I hope you understand that like I'm trying to make the work be the best that it can be. And by work, I mean these tools. With the graphic set, I of course have already like years of use with most of them, but the ones that I tweaked over the course of past week, those still I think I need to focus on a little bit more to make sure that some different uses will not break them. And by making these live streams, I think that also allows me a nice place in the future to say that like when people use these, then I can kind of like refer to like, for example, this live stream and show how they can be used in practice. I don't think that is necessary for my brushes for painters set, because like every single brush can be used for an entire illustration on its own. So however that is made, that is like completely up to the user. Oh my god, that is like so much corner tension that I'm just embarrassed how this really turned out. I'm sorry, everyone. The thing with the graphic style is that like you have to think about the negative space as an element that is just as important as all of your main objects, because the negative space is something that, especially in graphic style, is going to allow the illustration to breathe, and it's going to give your viewers the opportunity to understand what they are looking at. So too many details in this style is definitely something that is very easily the element that will kill the illustration. When using these quick shapes, like when you use the warp distortion like this, it gives a very like geometric and mathematical shape, like a little bit of like human touch to it, because it's not quite a perfect oval shape, it's just like a slightly wonky to the right directions. So that's an effect that I really like. I'm a huge fan of the warp tool. I think it's an element that I like to use in pretty much all of my work. Dr. Useless is asking, do you have your favorite color palette? I think the one that I created on my island trip, that is like one of my favorites. By the way, you can steal this by screenshotting this live stream as I have coffee, but this color palette called July Nostalgia, I think it's really cool, and it has those sort of like summery Ghibli colors that I love. And by the way, like those three colors are just amazing for a sky, so I recommend it. I will also slap my latest color palettes in the members downloads folder. So if anybody is a member here, don't bother with screenshots. You can just move that same file to your Procreate and you will have the palette. Okay, let's see what I'm gonna do with these. I don't know. Too many options. There are still so many elements that I need to kind of figure out. Let's look at those antlers. Or maybe legs first, because that is kind of an important element as well. Legs to be in place. Okay, I'm gonna pick this like bright pink color for those and use the blocking brush to have a bit more organic movement in the lines. The blocking brush, it does have pressure sensitivity set to size, but it is dampened curve. So that makes it possible to use it on really smooth lines. Just saw Jonathan's comment. Oh, have a nice doctor's visit, Samantha. Hope everything is fine. Do you only draw on iPad lately? Kind of everything? Well, I think it's fair to say that yes, but also on post-it notes. I have been thinking of like maybe doing more traditional art, but probably not the kind of stuff that anybody here would expect me to do. But I am mostly doing YouTube these days, so if I make more traditional art, it has to be part of like this content. I think previously when YouTube was kind of just like my hobby, then I had kind of more space and time to do traditional art because I could do it just for fun. But now every time that I do art, even if I love making art, I really do, but still I do have to think that like, am I able to make YouTube content out of this illustration idea when it comes to me? Because I get so many ideas, like basically all the time, that I can't say yes to everything that creativity throws my way. I try my best to say yes to everything that I can, but my time is just very limited. Time and money, like that, those are the things that basically matter to me the most when it comes to art. How much time is it going to take? And sometimes there are just like illustrations where I get so sucked in that I'm just like, screw it, I'm just going to make this and I don't care how long it's going to take. Like for example, when I was making fish cars, it was just like, oh my god, this is taking forever. And the treehouse illustration, dear lord, that was a whole adventure. And the isometric piece, I think that more than anything kind of started feeling like horrifying, because it had been so many days that I had been working on that same illustration that I was like, oh, when was the last time that I published a video? Am I still working on this? I still have those shoes in the top corner, and oh my god, the chimney isn't even in place yet. So like that kind of stuff goes in my mind when a project goes on just for super long. It's also the reason why I am pretty strict on the kind of commissions that I take and the prices that I set for the commissions, because I don't think most people understand just how much money it takes to make a commission, because it takes time and I need to survive during that time. And if it takes too much time, then it will mean that my other income streams are going to suffer, because I'm not releasing YouTube videos or working on my digital products, or I don't know, making courses. So that's part of the price. Also part of the price is always like the email communications, not with just that client, but with all of the previous clients that I had before that didn't pan out. Because that is my work. That has to be like calculated in the price of how that time is going to be worth it for me. And I'm not usually like very shy about my prices. I say it like pretty early on in the conversation when I have some kind of an idea of what the project is that the client wants, because like in half of the cases the price is like too high for a client, and I think it's better for all of us to kind of like just know beforehand that we are not a good client artist fit, so that we can find work that fits both of us. With the layer placement, I am kind of looking at the elements on like where they overlap, but also where they can be placed together so close that it's easy for me to find them. Like for example, this antler needs to go above this deer body layer, and obviously the other antler behind the deer that needs to go behind the deer, but I want to make sure that that is as close in layer structure to this as possible. So when I have all kinds of layer effects on top of these things, that it will be easy for me to find it quickly as possible, because that stuff can really add up quite quickly if you aren't making your layer order clean. Now I'm adding here above this layer with the cell brush. So I'm picking a color. Whoa. To get the clean look, my intent with these brush strokes is to get it done with as few brush strokes as possible, and that usually ensures that I have as clean of a shape as possible. You can kind of smoothen out some shapes with the transform tool. Actually, I kind of like this dent that is happening right here. I'm gonna keep and add a further here as a suggestion. I wanna have it overlap with this antler, because that can be just one way to communicate the order in which those shapes exist. Okay. Try adding some clipping masks. So all of the shading is gonna happen as clipping masks. So for that, I don't know, start with big spray. For some reason, I really want to make like the head super dark. I don't know how that is going to work with the lights, but it's something that I can figure out in the process. Hello, Melissa McLeod. You haven't attended any of the live streams before. I recommend like joining one of these material live streams. I think they are kind of fun. I understand that for some people they might be just work, but I have really enjoyed the material painting live streams myself. Also, thanks Saras Konstingheter for saying that. I think it's really nice that you do things in your own pace, Mikko. We will try to catch your streams as often as we can. Also, I have taken the habit of like making these live stream announcements one day beforehand in the posts. Hello, Gabe Williams. What size of canvas do you usually use? The script diva is asking. Well, I am using the size of a canvas that fits the painting, basically. In every illustration, I try to work as close to the edge of my hardware. Not just on iPad, but like on Photoshop too. My paintings are just like massive. But the things that I try to take into consideration are the DPI. I never work under 300 DPI because I'm always, in most cases, working for things to be printed later. Because I have a print shop, I don't have all of my illustrations there, but I want to keep the option open of like if somebody asks for a print of like a specific piece, that I will be able to provide that product in the print store. That is really important. But yeah, 300 dpi is basically it. And if you have a specific print resolution in mind, you can go into your canvas size settings where you have that pixels setting. You can change the pixels to like either centimeters or inches, and then just like input the paper size that you wish that your work be printed on. You can input a physical size there, and I think then those pixels become a bit more concrete. But if somebody is listening to this who is new to digital art and digital painting, I really wouldn't want you to worry about prints quite yet that much. At least it shouldn't be the thing that kind of slows down your learning process. Because if you feel like learning digital art is hard enough and it feels difficult, then making everything in print size is definitely a massive burden that you absolutely do not have to put on yourself. So I don't recommend doing that. Having just a handful of extra layers always in your use. That is what I recommend. And when you're just starting art, you have no idea of what your own workflow is going to be in the future or in that illustration. So I really don't recommend having like super high resolution paintings too early, because it can make the whole process just basically layer management, which is a skill of its own that you will also develop, but it's way more important to get the fundamentals and basics and learn color, brushstrokes, composition, material painting, imagination, all of that stuff is more important than layer management. Layer management is something that will come through practice as you make more illustrations. The colors always take a lot of time to kind of develop in this style, so I think the quickest way to get there is to just kind of like work on everything at once, and sooner or later you will find colors that you like, and then you have just like tiny small little puzzle piece that is in place, and then you can use that as kind of like a block of information to develop other areas and see what other areas that piece of information can solve for you. Is there something that you're bad at drawing that you want to get better at? Like how some artists can't draw feet but always get better at it. I don't know if I can draw feet, but I definitely can't draw hands. Yeah. Also, so many things, like every single animal species that you haven't seen on this channel, basically everything that I don't do or like doing, then I'm bad at those things. Except dark, gritty, violent monster horror illustrations. I'm really good at those, but I'm not gonna do them anymore. So that's a flex that I weirdly don't feel at all ashamed of. But at the same time, no point in asking me to do those anymore. It's not gonna happen. I'm done. Because this is so basically, if you haven't noticed, I don't know if it's like apparent in these live streams because you can't see what my hand is doing. So when I'm opening a layer like this and it looks like it's empty, I always check if it's empty, if it's safe to delete by pressing the arrow. Can you see? When I press the arrow, it like kind of pins this like message on the top of the screen that says that layer is empty, then I know that this layer is safe to delete. Just in case like somebody has noticed it and wondered it. I should leave it like that. It's Dreamcast video. I miss Dreamcast. So many, like, not great, but like brave and innovative games. I think that is kind of like approaching this sort of like derpy look that I like in the eyes of my characters. There are so like small tiny little elements that just tiniest angle in a very simple graphic eye like this can completely change the way that the animal looks, or character, or milk carton. So for doing a lighting effect, I'm going to be using this controlled spray because it has the most even line. That's why it's easier to control. Those like big chaotic sprays, usually you have to have like the brush somewhere around here if you want the spray to appear here in this sort of like chaotic splotches of color. But this sort of like more controlled spray is easier to use, but at the same time it doesn't have the same like high contrast texture to it. And just to reiterate that, like, for anybody who doesn't want to like get my brushes or like get them on camera later, that Procreate already has like some really good spray paint brushes in there, and I don't think there's anything wrong with them. Just use those if you want. Fine. Oh my god, this cap is squeezing my head, so I need to take it off. Sorry for my hair. Some questions. I'm gonna try to keep up with the chat. It could be a Jonathan is saying, it could be a traditional workflow such as painting what's in front of you, but with a twist like a limited palette or adding characters. The painter, YouTuber. James Gurney does some stuff using gouache. I think the medium is called. Yes, I love gouache paint. I love it. I really love it. I do think with gouache you have like the most control after digital painting. However, the gouache paints that I use, like they are super expensive and they're all dried. So if I wanted to kind of like activate them, it would take hours and hours to kind of like bring them back to life. And honestly, I don't know if I have that in me. Maybe I would just like need to order a new set online, which is like a terrible investment in my situation, but I don't know. I might do it someday. So the gouache paint that I use, it's from Japan, and the customs costs are insane for that, because they really don't like me applying that amount of liquid in bottles on a plane here. But it's not a terrible idea of doing that. I've also done like some lino cuts in recent years, just as a hobby. I think it's like fun. Pretty much like regardless of like your skill level. Also, it's quite cheap. I've studied several courses in different art schools of block printing, like metal block printing, and I can honestly say, without like any hint of irony, that I absolutely have given it my all. I have gone out of my comfort zone, and I can say without a shadow of a doubt that I absolutely hate metal block printing. Like there's no part of that process that is in any way enjoyable to me. However, lino cuts, that's block printing that I can see enjoyment in. Way less stressful. Also, I fully respect anybody who does like metal block printing, but I just think it's so funny how many people have come up to me and said that like, you don't know if you like it until you tried it. I've tried it like for months and months and months by different teachers in different environments. It's not for me. Where is my eye? Here. Capybaras, right? Well, I wish that I could do like more capybaras. My boyfriend loves capybaras. Of course, like everybody loves capybaras, but like my boyfriend really loves capybaras. I've never seen him so excited about absolutely anything during like the 17 years that we have been together. Nothing has been like as exciting for him as going to Japan and seeing capybaras and being able to pet them and feed them snacks. Like, I've never seen him that happy. Just thinking about it makes me smile. So I am constantly kind of merging layers that I feel like I don't need to have separated, just because it might feel like that solution for any given area feels like temporary, or that I have the selections still available to me that I can make changes if needed. Basically, with this style, what I'm constantly looking out for are edges that I can use to kind of like define edges and keep everything clean. So I don't have to like hand draw, for example, these shading edges. I can just use the layers that I have created as stencils. That is really important to keep the look clean. And it might seem like a lot of work, but like just when you do it a few times, you kind of get used to always thinking about how and where you can find or preserve at least one single edge, some layer that you can use as a selection or just as an alpha lock base, or a layer mask to define those edges. I really think that the kind of like mood is coming along quite nicely. I want to show one brush that is like one of these like completely silly brushes that I thought that doesn't even make sense to include this in, but I have used these myself so many times that I would hate it that like somebody has to go through this like same trouble and not to include them just because like they are silly brushes. I don't think that would make any sense. So these round dots are something that I often use like as a decorative element in my illustrations. And the reason why these are scattered dots is because like this way, for example, when I'm doing a night sky, then I can be sure that the stars have size variety in all of them when I do something like this. But the more useful brush, honestly, that I use more often is these even dots. And the reason why I think this is so useful is because like when I tap on the screen just once, I can get like a clean round dot. And in an illustration like this, honestly, you don't need this sort of like scatter brush that often when you don't have like tons of little dots. Then I am neurotic enough that I will just place every single dot by hand and just look at the distance from like the objects around and then place the size variety by hand by just changing the size myself. And for this sort of work, it's really handy to know that like when you use this size slider, can I show the overhead camera? So this thing. What? Why is there a pack of meat? It's showing like an old image. So that was my sad lunch earlier. I don't know why it's not updating. Damn it. So when you move this slider around and you pull away like towards the image to the right, now when I move this stylus on screen up and down, then you see that I am moving by %, in size. But when I go closer hovering this stylus like right over this lever, then it's really quick to move it around. So when you have a brush like this that already is quite small in size, and you want to create like small size differences, damn it, English language, then moving that stylus outward and doing like small changes, like that way you can get like really tiny changes to either your opacity or brush size. So I can hear Vivi digging her way through our living room carpet, and I would really love her to stop, because I'm the only one here taking care of her. Because the carpet cannot take this anymore. Last night I had to intervene with few of these like digging fits. I have no idea why this is happening. Usually when she's in heat, she starts like carrying around all of her toys like they are her puppies, and then she usually does all of these digging operations to make a nest for her future puppies, but this is not the time nor the place. But for whatever reason, after I came from Ireland, this digging has taken a serious turn. There's going to be a hole in that carpet soon. And she looks so serious when she's like digging through. Dr. Useless is asking, can't you make YouTube content out of commissioned artwork? I think Jonathan has the right answer for this. I think Jonathan is saying, I think that depends on if Mikko wants that, of course, and if the client consents. Mostly it's because the client rules are so difficult that they are almost impossible to keep track of. Not impossible, but there's also some logistic challenges to it that I don't think most people understand how much money it takes for me to keep any of the videos that I have. Like, for example, right now when I'm making that sky painting course on my membership, that is also going to be on Gumroad, as is this brush back, by the way. But like just having all of that stuff on my computer or on a hard drive, like this, like these cost hundreds of euros for one single disc, and I need tons of those to keep all of the videos that I currently have. And if I have more video material, especially if it's unedited video material that I haven't condensed into like 20 minutes, then that is tons of different discs, and that is hundreds and hundreds of euros of money. So just like having the videos here, that's why I like delete everything when it's kind of released, because like seriously, I just can't afford to keep it. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but I don't think people understand just like how expensive like storage is in that scale. Usually one video can take from like 2 to 3 teras of space, hardware space, to create. So I need that space to be free just to create a single video. And if I create like one of those long form process videos that sometimes when I do a YouTube video, it is like highly edited because I'm trying to kind of squeeze a process that has taken sometimes weeks or days to make into like 12 minutes, then I might release a a full process video that is like all of that footage without edits or on the membership side of my channel. That wouldn't make sense to release as a normal YouTube video for everybody, because like that would just torpedo my retention and engagement, because like that's not of interest to most people. So even if the client said that they are okay with me releasing that illustration as a YouTube video, even if they were okay with that, because honestly, with the clients that I have worked with, I know that like my channel is not the biggest channel on YouTube, or that my Instagram account isn't the biggest account on Instagram. But I do think that for most of my clients, still having visibility on those channels would be beneficial. So it would be something that I would kind of ask before starting a commission. But of course, like there's those other considerations that I need to think of as well. Like, for example, I don't know if I had said this already. YouTube is trying to tell me now would be a good time to insert ads. No, I'm not gonna insert ads. Like, we're on a live stream. Stop bothering me. So when I did, for example, that frog step in the review for this XP Pen tablet, XP Pen actually contacted me that like they were interested in buying an illustration from me for to promote their product, this tablet. And I said that like you can buy a license for this specific artwork, and because it wasn't like created for them, the license price, honestly, it was like very affordable to a huge company like that. And I honestly think that like that is like one of the biggest drop balls in marketing that I have seen in recent years, is when they didn't take that offer and buy the license to use that illustration, because honestly it is my most liked post ever on Instagram, and they could have had that. Like that would have been up to them for grabs to have like all of those eyeballs to see that artwork. Like that I don't get. I understand that like some person is making these decisions, and like it's a piece of artwork that not everybody is going to like, and I understand that that might be a piece of art that is just not what the person in marketing was looking for, but just the numbers alone would have made it worth it anyway, regardless of if they like it or not. That's just my own opinion when it comes to like marketing. How am I going to make this here visible so that this thing is not kind of ruining the entire illustration? Think me. I need contrast. Let's try some dramatic lighting. Rahiti is asking, if you don't have YouTube, will you earn enough money with your art? I think that is two questions. Basically, if I wouldn't have YouTube, no, I wouldn't make enough money with my art. But then I would have to do more clients like I used to, and then that would be it. So I can have either the focus of like doing more client work or doing more YouTube. And I think in the recent years, I have been going more and more towards making content for YouTube, because that allows me to make art that I want to make. Not saying that like all client jobs aren't fun. Like usually the kind of client jobs that I do take on, they are the kind of illustrations that I would love to do anyway. So because I can't do all of the commissions anyway, I tend to choose ones that kind of excite me or inspire me somehow. But I don't think that's like an either or question. I highly recommend like anybody who is thinking of doing art as a job, that you develop multiple streams of income, so you can kind of like switch between them dynamically depending on your situation. I think this leg needs work. Vivike tuli. Tuliko se mua katsomaan? Tuli. Oliko sun nappuloit yhtä? That's streamin jälkeen. She stopped digging through the carpet. It's honestly the best that she can do at the moment. I think this is kind of working. And then there is had some like reference images of deer on a different tab, and this is basically faces of deer. It has a kind of like white area of fur around the snout here. Oh, I'm gonna try to see if that works. And by white, because color is relative, anything that is lighter will do fine. Some deer have this area that goes all the way here. That's something that I want. I think it's kind of like alien looking, but not in a bad way. I'm gonna make a separate layer, and this is what I'm going to use as an option to just see if this works. worth going through the same flow of brushstrokes several times just to have one that you like. Because honestly, this doesn't take that much time. And it's not going to ruin your entire day if you go through the same flow a few times, because such small differences can really have a huge impact on the overall impression. I really like that white. I think it looks more huggable. Are you supposed to want to hug a deer? Probably. I'm just gonna say yes. Going to need to get rid of those line art layers, because at this point they are just distracting me. Except maybe this one. It's distracting me as well, so turn it off. Now that I have these on their own layer, I could do an alpha lock here, but to do that I'm going to use this to separate this layer as its own set. I'm gonna pull it up here and remove it, the clipping mask feature, and to separate it I'm going to use this as a selection and then go back on this layer and then set the selection as a mask and then crunch these two together. Now I have this separated, so I am kind of more free to use it however I want. I'm going to use this as a widen layer. And then just find a maybe more stronger hue to keep the mood in the piece, because it's so blue everywhere that it wouldn't make sense for the blue to be reflected more on this surface as well. My god, I love this track. And in between, I'm adding one more layer. Just do like a shadow gradient. This I'm going to Gaussian blur. And reduce in opacity. This is not going to do that much, but overall, when the surfaces have these sort of like gradients that make the color kind of move and be more alive everywhere, it makes the eye move across surfaces a bit more active way. one more thing that I want to show about this brush set that I'm probably not going to be using in this illustration, but I'm super happy about this fix, so I'm gonna show you the 2.0 version of a leaf ornament. This was a brush that was in my 100k set back when I reached 100k on this channel. But now I have fixed the biggest issue in this brush. So when you do like very light brush strokes with a leaf ornament brush stroke, even when you like really almost let go of the brush, it doesn't produce like very shoddy, ugly looking half opacity brush strokes. And the line is also dynamic in that it lives with the brush stroke, so that it doesn't look as monotonous anymore. So when you make, for example, graffiti with this, I think that's a really cool use for this. Anyway, as long as you don't lift off the brush from the canvas, you can keep going. Anyway, so that is going to be included in this set. The leaf ornament with these fixes, honestly, I think it's way better now. And that's one of the reasons why I'm really happy that I didn't publish this sooner, because like it's those little like bug fixes in brush making that might not seem like a big deal, but when you're working with the limitations of like some bug in a brush, it can be really annoying. And that's why like just having tons of on-screen time with the brush set is really important for me, so that I can like find those, because you don't have to run into those issues with every single illustration. It's just like in some corner cases you notice a bug. That's why you need to just have more time with the set. It's like so easy to miss some of those. I think I need to come up with a way to like stylize some grass in the foreground. Kind of like make the deer sink into this illustration a bit better. I'm gonna pick, the reason why I pick these crazy colors is because I don't wanna paint on the grass with green or dark blue, because I need to be able to see what I'm doing as I'm making these blades. It's still important to think about the line rhythm, the rule of threes, chaos in brush strokes, or lack of it when you're doing something like is supposed to be clean and illustrated. I'm just thinking about that negative space. If I have enough room for every brushstroke to read my overlapping lines, or just telling the viewer to look into places where they shouldn't be or that aren't that important. Okay, so now that I have these brushstrokes, I can just fill a new layer with the grass color and set it as a clipping mask. And in alpha lock mode, I am going to be using the controlled spray because it works best in smallest scale. There might be like other more graphic ways to stylize the grass, but the only way to find those styles is to just experiment, and I think that is going to be different for everybody, like depending on your own aesthetic preferences, basically. Where are my here? Now I think I need to finally like solve the background somehow because it's not doing what I want it to do. It doesn't have to be realistic, it just has to kind of communicate what I want it to communicate. I think I need something that communicates flow and the forest being in communication with this deer creature. So right now I'm thinking of like painting the wind. For this, it can help to reduce the size of the canvas because that allows you to make much smoother brush strokes. Or you could just go into your brush settings, like set the smoothing to something super crazy. But I don't mind a little bit of like wiggliness in the line. Or basically I have had to kind of grow into it. though that I am not too picky about the wiggliness of lines, because I don't have options basically with the way my hands work. Wiggly lines or nothing. But if you have like surgeon's hands, then first of all, lucky you. Please don't write that in the chat. Have some mercy on the rest of us. And yeah, you can choose when you want to have that wiggliness in your lines. Because I am using this warp transform, that kind of makes everything have more unified flow, because now the way that I am transforming this layer, it is basically tweaking every single line to the same direction a little bit. And when I'm moving this, I'm looking at where I want the corners to read as easily as possible. So I am, for example, making sure that the tail angles are not connecting with these wind lines. And that allows those areas to read. And here I want the head to be pronounced. So I'm making sure that the wind lines are not connecting with the lines that I need to be kind of out of the picture. Still might kind of erase all of them. I'm gonna try to squeeze these together to have more intense inner lines here. I think that kind of works. Leaving some room for the head. And the further ear, I think that's fine. Now I'm gonna add a clipping mask to this, and then use one of the bigger spray. Let's see. Maybe I should use this in additive blend mode, and then just pick a super dark desaturated color. And then do another layer and just let it be blurred to gradient on these lines a little bit. I think it looks like silk. That's why there's something about this that I like. Now I'm gonna see if I'm going to do the trees or if there's going to be like some completely different design element that I want trees to be. And now it's just like at this point I am getting to where what I was talking about in the beginning, that I just have now more information to make these sort of decisions. So when it feels like I can't continue this part of the illustration, that might be true, that like it's literally something that I cannot work on because it's at the wrong point of the process. So sometimes you need to just like kind of back off and let the piece be, or let one area to be unfinished, because it might be that you don't even have the possibility of like gaining information on what to do with it at that point. I honestly think that this style is worth trying for everybody who is like at all interested in it, because it can be so beneficial for like composition skills when you are simplifying elements, like very basic shapes. Like that is really going to challenge your design thinking. That is something that is usually very difficult to teach in more complex, more detailed illustrations. When, for example, when a student has like a whole illustration full of details, even for a teacher, it can sometimes be difficult to kind of like break apart the composition to see what is like the most insulting aspect of the illustration, to kind of like try to find some clarity when so many elements are screaming for your attention. But when you're working with graphic shapes like these, it can be usually very easy to tell the areas where the composition breaks down, even for the student themselves. So I always prefer it when a student is kind of like finding their own problems and fixing them. Why I think like in these sort of like critique sessions where the students critique their own work and also complement their own work, which like often is more hard for most of the students. Like when I tell people to tell 3 good things about their own illustration or painting in front of a class, that is like always the harder task for any student to do than to critique their own work. So I think it's important to practice both. I'm gonna try to stay updated on the chat. Hi, is this client work? No. My client for this are the channel members, because I am testing the brush set for them. I'm gonna make an announcement on the Instagram stories when it's available. And probably Gumroad later when I have some marketing materials, but honestly those take so much time that I'm not gonna even guess how long that will take. I don't release a lot of digital products because it's a lot of work. But I know that everybody can't be channel members, and I respect that. So I think like having this set on Gumroad makes sense, because it's probably like my most tested set after Process for Painters, because I've made so many illustrations with this set. I just hope that these live streams that I make, where I show like the purpose of these different processes, that will be enough when people ask me how those processes work. I'm trying to make like all the information available, because I want it to be like beginner friendly as well. Now, I think there's an interesting rhythm happening in the trees that is, like, at least to me, more interesting to look at than what I had before. Also, Tiffany's gone, but I'm glad that you were able to join us. Esme is saying, I always think of Bambi when I see a deer. Yes. I saw a deer in Ireland. Also, it was a huge deer. I think I might have gotten a small photo of it with the deers, but it's a bad photo, but at least I have any evidence that it happened. It was bleak and rainy the entire time when we were in Ireland, which is probably what my friend wanted, because he came from Spain, where there is basically sauna weather every day. I don't envy that. Somehow, I think I need like a bit more pink somewhere. I don't know where, but just a little bit. Feels like these needs it. Just gonna make some dots, and see where I could squeeze that in. No moi. I think we just wanted to be in the picture for a little bit. Let's see some comments. What are we doing? Whoop. How's it going, everyone? I'm gonna draw paint as well, because this is inspiring. That's great. I always love it when people paint during the live streams. Ben Tam is saying that's much better background than one before. Great. We have some improvement. Abila Costa is saying, I haven't left a comment yet, but I really feel like I need to thank you a lot. I found your channel recently and I've already learned a lot about how to approach art in general. Oh, that's great. I always appreciate those comments, because when making YouTube content feels hard, it's comments where people say how my videos have helped them, those are the ones that kind of keep me going. It's not a motivation to work or to make money, but it's honestly, I feel like I could be doing commission work or work for another company again, but this is work that I feel has meaning. That's why I feel so motivated to do it. Soon I have an iPad and I can start drawing in Procreate myself. That's fun. That sounds exciting. Yes, Abilio, that comment about the clutter. That's always a difficult thing to notice, because it can sometimes mean that you have to make some really hard cuts. Let's see. Oh, the puppers. Bibi is so cute. Yes, she is. We've had a lot of good quality time lately after my trip. Sometimes during this time she needs to be in my lap. I tried not to break anything. Way down. Oh. Yeah. Is it my brain or is the front leg just a little bit shorter? Yes, I think the other front leg that is behind the deer, I think that is a little bit too long. The one that is on the ground. I think you are right. Could I fix that really quickly? Let's see. At this point, the several elements are starting to be connected, so for these selections, sometimes you need to select multiple different layers. I think the raised leg also could be a bit bigger. For that, also select this. think at the top of this illustration, a little bit of extra space. I just hope I don't have like tons of different layers back there. Is it possible to have a painting look so finished on an iPad with limited canvas space? What would you recommend? What is the limited canvas space that you are talking about? Do you mean like the size of your screen, or like the size of your canvas in your screen? Can you give a bit more information so I can like try to help you? Question. Going to be using, of course, big. I know that the tree line needs to be kind of like redone, but it's not like important design work at this point. So I'm going to work on other aspects of this illustration, so that you don't have to spend time looking at me like cleaning up, basically. I think the color story also needs something on the bottom of the illustration to kind of respond to that top half of the illustration. I'm going to crunch these antler parts together. For now, just have a way to kind of test the colors. I know that one part is still not attached, but this should give me the information that I need regardless. I think that makes sense, but I really don't like the dark end of this gradient. I'm gonna fix it, but I'm gonna switch the other answer first. Trying to match this, but I just did. Controlled spray, I'm doing a clipping mask because then I can probably use the same thing for both antlers. Like every time when you can do one element just once and recycle it, and always recommend doing that. I'm using a widen layer that allows me to fill even the tiniest cracks there. And that kind of pushes back that antler further away, but still filling the entire area. So I'm painting kind of on invisible areas here. And this is just so that I can take this widen layer and drag it all the way up here to the other antler and set that as a clipping mask. Now I'm gonna erase some parts out with the same spray. Actually, I'm gonna use controlled spray because I wanna attach this part here. Actually, this doesn't make any sense. So forget everything I just said. I'm gonna make another clipping mask in normal blend mode and use the deer color. And this actually makes sense now. Okay. Don't you hate it when you try to say something that is like you think that is going to be useful on a live stream, and then it's just like a massive mistake that you're making in front of everybody, making a complete fool out of myself. Not the first time or the last time. So whatever I get. I have no idea why in this apartment it sounds like all the furniture is clattering in the living room. What the hell is happening over there? It has started some kind of an operation. Hello, or is it Shello, is saying, "Hi Mikko, just joined the stream, absolutely lovely painting, thank you. As a beginner artist with no schooling, I have been wondering recently about where I should start in advancing my skills." Well, I recommend watching the recent video that I made for beginners. So that is something that I would like honestly recommend, like that exercise and applying that exercise to different subjects. I made recently this live lesson series on my membership about how to begin drawing digitally on Procreate, but I think it's like very basic stuff. And the video that I posted on this like public YouTube channel, basically like take that exercise that is in that video and just apply it into the subject that you want to learn. And that's it. Am I going to now fix it? Like, this is me like doing safe, like emotionally safe stuff, like right now. Maybe I got spooked by like all these like big creative decisions that I just made. And now Mikko is going into these easy solutions that honestly nobody needs to see. But I guess I'm just like trying to give my brain a break from making scary big decisions all the time. I'm switching that to normal blend mode just so that I can color pick it properly. This is the color. And that was in additive blend. I think breaking these lines with the texture kind of brings more attention to the head of this ear, which is kind of like the main contrast point in the whole illustration. So that's why I think it's important. I also think I can use the same way of focusing attention when it comes to this streak of the wind. So I'm adding one splatter here to the middle, and it's going to kind of darken this part of the throat that is meeting that highlight. Also around the back, I think it's more important to focus the attention on that highlight on the back of this animal, so that's why I'm adding this. So these pencils, I haven't used them in this illustration yet for anything else than sketching. But if you look at any of my graphic illustrations, you can often see that I am using either this piano notes pencil or vintage pencil. They're basically the same thing, but like with different types of textures to bring this sort of like more organic look. And I use it always inside a defined vector-like shape. And this can be kind of like a way to bring in that sort of like hand-drawn look to any illustration, depending on what you want. But honestly, when you get to download this brush set, I'm now speaking to all of the members. I recommend trying these brushes, these piano notes and vintage pencil, as just normal drawing pencils, because they are really good drawing pencils as well, just for sketching or doing a drawing when you are okay with having a bit more texture brush strokes. Because the hidden cool thing about these is that, like, when you hold the stylus sideways, you can really kind of get a lot of flexibility out of this. As you can see, when you turn the stylus sideways, it works basically like a normal pencil on paper. Also, when you're trying with different textures and when you're doing an illustration in a graphic style, you can just experiment with patterns. Like, for example, here I'm using the same pencil but in low opacity, and one way to kind of like solve this area could be to like have an organic looking pattern, just like describe the flow, the environment. I guess with this style that you have to be bold to invent your own rules on how you are depicting things, and then just stay consistent with it. Like, no matter how outlandish your idea is, if you're just like do it with confidence and stay consistent with the same shape language throughout the illustration, people will buy what you're telling them as truth within that world that you are creating. Sometimes just like resorting to realism, that can seem as like the artist being insecure and not sure where to go with the illustration, and then you are kind of like setting yourself up for comparisons with the real world, and if the rest of your illustration isn't matching with those comparisons, then like it's going to be kind of like hard to watch an illustration like that, because you're making the viewer do so much work before they can kind of think about the message in the piece. I think that should always be more important. You can be either kind with your details or selfish with your details. I think selfish details are details that are made so that you as an artist would seem more skillful, or other people would be kind of impressed by your work. They don't need to be impressed, they just want to have a story that is worth seeing. And when you're kind with your details, you focus on the message and what you want to say, and to have the message be conveyed in as easy way as possible. So it's not about you, it's about the illustration. so often an illustration already kind of knows what it wants to be, but like then all of these like need to be, I don't know, liked, or a person that does impressive artwork that can come in the way would work. I have so many layers that I need to kind of make some decisions about squishing them down. I'm trying to squeeze some elements together that are ready to squeeze together. Like for example, this gradient. I don't need to have that as a separate layer. This is kind of like heavy duty layer management right now. This is exactly what I wouldn't want anybody have to do too early in the process. Now I think I have few layers that I managed to rescue my use for all of that. And for these gradients, I really don't need any of these clipping masks. Because here the only thing that matters to me is the clean lines of the wind. I don't know if I'm going to keep these tulips here, but I just want you to pay attention to how little space I have to add these. If you look at the shape language in this illustration, like the chunkiness of the detail really does dictate how much space elements like these need to exist at all. So that is like the placement and the design work that gets harder and harder as you go on with the illustration. Already, you can probably tell that like I can't keep all of those dots. Like for example, these two are connecting right here. So just that single dot is in the wrong place for the composition to work. And that's why I don't think it's at all too much work to place those dots by hand when you have so few of them anyway. And I think a line this small might be just too small. Every illustration like this has their kind of like detail level that is like the minimum. I recommend being careful with brushes that don't have a size minimum at all, because too small brush strokes in a wrong illustration, they can start looking like noisy hairlines. When I was flying to Amsterdam, the one thing that kind of stuck in my brain as something that I felt was super inspiring is the shape of the fields. I don't know why, but in Netherlands, the fields are very thin. They're like small streaks, and the color changes depending on what they're growing on the field. And from the plane, I think that looks beautiful. I don't know how I could like incorporate that into a painting idea, but it's definitely one of those details that is just like now there stuck in my visual library, and I just want to incorporate that into something somehow. So when you see thin streaks of fields in my illustration, you know where that has come from. I know that this color is wrong, but it's so easy to switch it in hue and saturation. So I just did the manual work of like having it there, and now I can go and check my options. Basically see what would be the right. I think this kind of like interestingly marries the shape of that or the hue of that stem with the flower. It was not the color I thought that would work with that, but apparently it does. So I'm going to pull use a little bit upward. Tiny bit. And this is going to be the in-between color. This is going to be the local color of the flower. I think the mood is coming there. But also one thing that is going to, in the end, affect the mood a lot are those adjustment layers that are gonna come on top of everything. I can quickly show like one way to work those. This is an overlay blend mode. I'm gonna use very pale light color. Blur it in. I'm probably going to do this part like from scratch in the end, because it requires so many layers that you really need to have made kind of like all of your decisions by that point. This could probably work better if it was cutting out the flowers, for example. And also the grass, I think. So for an edit like that, I would just go onto the grass layer, select it, and set this as a layer mask for the gradient that I just made, and invert it to cut it out from that effect. And now that I made those like completely insane graphic lines on the trees, by the way, I don't think those dots are doing any, because like there's already this like shape language that I invented that frankly I think is way more interesting than this set of leaves. So I'm going to take that away so that now the trees only have one shape language in them. I think this is kinder detail to do for the viewer. Now that I have invented this shape language, I can use that rule on these trees. And for these details, I'm using the vintage pencil again. I'm gonna set the layer opacity lower, so I have the effect of the gradient underneath always visible, but the opacity is so high that detail is still visible enough. I mean, it's not important detail, so that's why contrast is better to be kind of low. I could just do details like this all day. I think this is really fun. So relaxing. It's like you're giving the trunk of a tree like a really nice massage. And I could add an overlay here to the bottom half of this illustration. Add a little bit more blue. Big spray again. By the way, the cool thing with these sprays is when like you're doing Gaussian blurs is that this is like a much easier way to avoid banding in lines than just using like a straight up airbrush. I have an airbrush in this set as well called stable airbrush, and this has been stabilized in the movement and the pressure as well. But with this stable airbrush, I would only use this to airbrush like small gradients within the image. Like when I have, for example, a selection, an alpha lock, or a clipping mask defined selection that I am shading, then I would use this. But for like a really big gradient, I honestly prefer having something like this big spray before I apply the Gaussian blur, because that way I can avoid the banding of like the color having these stairs when it's being blurred all over the canvas, because that coarse splatter that allows for that like organic look that when it's blurred you can like you don't get more steps in the color gradient, but the steps are like really almost impossible to see when it's blurred, because it's such an organic shape over an existing illustration that it's almost impossible to see that effect. When you look at it in this like tiny thumbnail in the top right corner, you can see that like the organic shape of that blur makes that staircase effect almost impossible to see. I'm going to apply this overlay gradient only on the light parts of this ear fur, like pulling the light effect lower so I can have a little bit on this nice little tummy as well. Actually, I kind of like the way that it looks on the legs as well, so I might need to look for ways to get some extra layers to make that happen. Yeah, I think that does it. So I think some might think that this like more graphic illustration style can look a bit sterile, but I think it can have like just as much soul and story and mood. It's just you have to put it in there. Like the process are never going to do the work for you. Like even if it would probably like make me more money if I said that like this is super easy with this process that I have made, but honestly it's the work that and the love that you give to your illustration that makes it work or not. Like it doesn't matter whose process you are using or if they're the default free ones. Like it's your illustration and it's your story, and that's the thing that is going to make people remember your illustration. Then when you are in a phase, do I want to like change the eye? It's kind of fine. I think the whiteness kind of makes me feel like this deer is looking at me, but at the same time I have to come up with the expression myself. I think I might prefer. I think there's some like missed opportunities for like some additional bling on these patterns. So of course that is going to happen. Oop. Wow, I have missed so much. Sorry. The script diva is asking, how do you keep brushes from looking pixelated on larger canvases? What's the largest brush size canvas Procreate can accept when making a brush? I think the brushes can be really huge. I think it's just about the brush maker like making all of the resources in high enough resolution. Of course, when you go into like, for example, the grain and you blow it up into like over 100%, which I never do, but like that could be a way for the brush to appear pixelated. There's a member who is saying game dev beauty, saying, I first wanted to say that there hasn't been one painting that I haven't by you, Mikko, not to mention what an incredible teacher you are. Oh, thank you. It's so awkward to like read a compliment out loud. It's like I'm complimenting myself here, which is like the definition of a Finnish nightmare. Finnish people are not good at taking compliments, or especially saying them about themselves. Oh, now I'm like just fondling the screen and like making some changes because I got so distracted. Welcome back, Samantha. There are multiple factors. Like I see that like Sakyu is trying to explain the brush size in Procreate, but like there are multiple factors that affect the maximum brush size. Honestly, like for example, there is like one setting that is specifically the maximum size of the brush, and if that is less than 100% or maximum, which in some settings is a different thing than 100%. Maximum is a different setting than 100% on some elements. I'm repeating myself because I think it's like so crazy that that is actually true. What was I saying? Mikko, concentrate. So there are multiple settings that contribute to the maximum size of a brush. It's not just this. This is not the only thing that controls the maximum size of the brush. That's what I wanted to say. But the real answer is that like there's like spacing, maximum size, filter options, all of those things can affect the maximum size of the brush. So this is not the only factor that affects the brush size. Honestly, sometimes I've had to like search with cats and dogs when I want to have like a brush that is like usable in maximum size. Ashley Sharp is saying professional 15 plus years, 3 businesses later. Now I'm PTSD recovery. In PTSD recovery mode, I guess. Sorry to hear that. Your channel has been critical in rekindling my relationship with art. I'm forever grateful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us, Ashley. I think art has like the capacity to be so much more powerful and effective than sometimes even therapy, and like great therapy, because art can often be the exact thing that you need when you're making art. I don't know how to better explain it. Sometimes you're struggling with a piece and just like working on it for days and days, and then when you finish it, and then you kind of understand what the message of your piece is yourself, and it seems like it might not have been the painting that you wanted to make, but it is the painting that you needed to make. I don't know how to explain that any better, but I have gone through that process so many times when a painting is done and then I look at it and I'm like, oh, I get it. This was for me. This is why I needed to see this. This is what I needed to learn about myself. And like that has happened so often with art that it often feels like your creativity always has your best interest in mind. And it can like seem like a really magical process often when you're working on something and then you have been spending so much time with it, and then suddenly comes a day when you understand what it is that you were working on. That can often be like so eye-opening in many ways. Okay, I am looking for layers to get rid of. This is exactly the reason why I said that you should always think about having like multiple extra layers and working that you don't immediately need. Just because this stuff can like honestly break anyone's concentration. And this is never the important stuff. Like you should always have enough layers to concentrate on the work. Now, because I can't make a new clipping mask, or can I? Maybe I can. Anyway, the selections are confusing to work with because you have these animated selection lines everywhere. Oh my god, I love that. I love it. Yes, yes. I mean, like this part. I'm gonna keep it. I'm going to keep it. I'm gonna be happy with that. Sometimes it's the smallest thing that can like change an illustration from like, okay, things are progressing to like, oh my god, I am so excited about what I'm making right now. I think it's that brushstroke that I didn't know that I needed to make. It kind of reminds me of the shape of the tail on my dog in Monster Hunter Rise. I love the dogs in that game. I think these dots that I made earlier, I think they can have a bit more story purpose if I turn them into something that connects them with the flowers, those tulips underneath. Oh my god, I'm like really desperately need more layers to use right now. Tulips, yes, that's what I was looking for. I'm gonna put them in additive blend mode, then add a black clipping mask, and then go in with that very controlled gray, small scale. Just paint a little bit of highlights. I'm just trying to have some restraint, because these are not the most important part here. Game dev beauty is saying, I'm normally a painter, but your pixel videos so got me inspired to try one of my pieces in pixel art, and it was such a joy to do. Also, castle video on Gumroad is freaking incredible. Thank you. Wow. I'm glad somebody saw that, because like that took me 3 months to edit, like that whole breakdown. The new tutorial series that I'm making for my members and for Gumroad, it's like much shorter videos, and it's like much more like practical painting advice. It's basically an art course in disguise, and yes, I'm really excited to finish that, at least the first project soon, but I still want to make more projects before that product is released. So all of those videos are going to be in my membership until the whole course is done. Like the people in the membership are basically my guinea pigs to like get all of the like the pre-tools and tutorials before anybody else gets access to them. And honestly, like your feedback matters a whole lot to me when I'm making those. So like I do make like new videos based on what people say that they understand or don't understand in those. So those help me make tutorials that can help the most amount of people. That's really important to me. I should probably stop this live stream, right? Because I usually always say that like I should find the visual impact and the design and the mood, and I think I have all of those things. Also, this has almost been like 3 hours already, and I completely forgot to pay attention to the time because I got so absorbed in making this thing. Let's see a few more comments. I'll watch the rest of the stream later. Promised my best friend or boyfriend, who knows, we would watch Joanna Lumley's Japan. See you later, everyone. Thank you for joining, Esme. Get News likes the horns. I like the horns as well. Also, if anybody is having an art block, paint like deer horns, because like you can go so crazy with horns every time that just do it. Thank you, thank you. I can't read all the nice comments because it seems like super awkward. The true rainbow effect on those spots, yes. Everybody has to have a little bit of rainbow in them. Have you played Elden Ring? Yes, I know it's hard to balance art and be a hardcore gamer. Currently I'm playing Bloodborne and Monster Hunter. I've been playing Monster Hunter for a lot longer than From Software games. I think Monster Hunter games are basically where that whole game style of animation-based combat started, and I still love those. And I love the community of Monster Hunter games. I think the community of From Software games is like absolute crap. Like, there's no easy way of saying that, honestly. Like, all get-gooders can just like get out of my face. But I recommend playing Elden Ring. It's a great game, but you do need a guide for it. Like, honestly, those quests weren't designed for people to find out without the community. What helps you avoid burnout in art? I'll make art that I actually like. Like, this stuff that I make, I want to see it. I'm gonna put the time-lapse replay on, so as I'm reading these, I make stuff that I like because that keeps me loving art. By the way, I kind of love this like dopey looking eye that I had in the beginning. Yeah, I have to try that. Yes, I think it's important to also know what you like. I've been talking about this many times on this channel, but like often most artists, they know what they want, but that is not the same things as knowing what you like. And often those are very different things. So you might look at art that you want to make, but you don't like to make it, even if you have the skills to make it. So liking something is a much smaller, much more subtle emotion to have towards something. So that's why I always encourage to actively look for it. Desire is a very strong emotion, that you have this burning desire to want something. But when you like something, it's a much more subtle feeling, like especially as humans, because we don't purr like a cat when we feel that something is pleasant. But like when I find a thing that I like, for example, like mixing colors or finding the right hues that match together, that's why I often like say on these live streams that like I like this thing that I'm doing right now, because like those are the small moments that I enjoy, and it's this process. When I post this illustration on Instagram, and if people like it or don't like it, that's not the reason why I do it, because honestly the other people's opinions, like, they are not that important to me than just making art that I need to respect myself. Like, honestly, when I make something that I feel like I'm proud that I made it, then like that inspires me. Like, I can inspire myself if I can stay true to the creativity and the assignments that it gives me. So at least that's for me the reason. Also, the way to avoid burnout in art is to notice that when you don't want to make art, have a damn break. Also, don't call your burnout an artist blocks. Everybody needs a break from any work that they do, so maybe you just need a break. Don't give it this sort of like a big scary name that seems like somehow deep and mysterious. I sometimes need a break and I need to go and play Monster Hunter. That's it. I have Atomaurus. I have no idea what that is. I'm an artist and a game developer, and I have to say there can be a balance. I just feel once you start making games, you as a player tend to change, but the passion is even more fueled. Yeah, I don't know. I think when I stopped making video games, I definitely noticed over the past few years that I have now enjoyed playing games a lot more than when I was making games. That's just me maybe, but like at least in my experience, I was always playing games, but like now I play games way more. I'm trying to finish this before 3 hours. That's AAA games for you. Yeah, I think I now mentioned Bloodborne and Monster Hunter, and like those are the only like really big budget games that I have been interested in recent years. Usually it's like more indie studios. I like Switch very much because the hardware limitations kind of push the creatives on development teams to find their own style and to find a style that is unique. So that's why I love playing Switch games. I rarely touch my PS4. Okay. That's it for the stream. And this brush set will be soon available for all channel members. I hope that you enjoy it as much as I have enjoyed making all of these graphic illustrations with this set, and it's really like probably the biggest channel giveaway that I have done recently on this membership. And for everybody else, this brush set is also going to be available on Gumroad later. My Gumroad can be found in the description box, and remember that you can use these techniques with like even just the basic default process in Procreate as well. This is just my set that I like to use. So I also added these raster brushes, but I don't recommend combining these raster textures with these gritty texture brushes. So if you want to use the raster textures, I recommend sticking to those as their own thing. And of course there are like paper textures and all of that fun stuff. Okay, I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you for joining this stream, and I hope that you also got some art done. And if you didn't start yet, like maybe now would be a perfect time to start. Okay, thanks and bye.